Caledonian Elixir. Broadcasting from Glasgow, Scotland, welcome to the Caledonian Elixir. And you can get involved by calling free from the UK on 0738 745 3353. That's 0738 745 3353. And if you're overseas, in the US, Canada, India, the international number is also available on the screen. Or you can click the link and in the video description. Once you do that, just enter a name, simple, and whether you agree or disagree, it's free. So come on the show, share your views. You can also leave live chats and engage with us that way, and engage with other viewers too. So I'm your host, Vincent Lawler, and for all you tuning in for the first time, this show is about everything from politics to the paranormal, and we tell it with wit and true grit, and uncensored with live callers and guests. Now, what we're covering today is an interwoven web of corporate government surveillance, gene sequencing of newborn babies, and biotelemetry. And if you're wondering what biotelemetry is and why you should even care about it, well, we're going to get into that later on with guests. But in short, it's the remote monitoring of living organisms, i.e. people, me and you, via wireless technology. And it can be done for, research, data gathering purposes, or more nefariously for mind control. However, it is now associated, telemetry that is, with our genetic footprint, as in the UK, the government has recently announced that all babies are to get DNA testing. Newborns in the UK will have whole genome sequencing in order to enable government specified health treatment. So if this sounds like the 90s film Gattaca or Brave New World, it's because it kind of is ushering that. So it's essentially been done to predict and prevent illness. But this initiative has also been done with connections to Palantir, a country with ties to the US Department of Defense that is involved in biotelemetry, working with IDF, allegedly surveilling targets in Gaza. So it's a brain-bending show we've got ahead with guests and callers, and my producer who'll be helping us out here too. So I'm going to get this show on the road by bringing on my first guest and co-producer, Mr. Gareth John.
Hello, Vincent.
How are you doing, Gareth John?
I'm very well, thank you.
Very well.
Yeah, very well.
Good to hear.
Aside from the existential threat that this biotelemetry brings, been having some very interesting nightmares about it recently.
Is Professor Jam of the Bry Institute?
Yes, he's there. I see him.
Hey, before you add him, Jam, we have you on. We're going to add you in just a couple of minutes. Just let us. So Gareth, how are you today?
I'm good. Yeah.
And
glad to be back on the show.
And are you looking forward to having Professor Jam of the Bry Institute?
Yeah, it should be interesting.
Right. You know what? Let's get this show on the road. So, but ladies and gentlemen, this is Professor Jam from the Bry Institute.
He is blank.
Blank.
Yeah.
Blank.
Yeah.
He's blanking us.
Yeah.
Did you leave?
No, he's there, but he's not on camera or anything.
Is he on the screen?
No, he's just disappeared.
No.
Oh.
Right. Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll keep an eye and see if it comes back.
So essentially, what we're looking at is we're going to start with this gene sequencing business. So to start with, this is newborns having their genome sequence, and this is a plan launched by the UK government. So essentially, this is DNA mapping, a creative blueprint for every newborn baby born in the UK. And this, can have, its pros. It can help with early detection, identifying conditions before they manifest, therefore preventing or providing better treatment in the future. In fact, what I'm going to do is there's a video of this being announced in mainstream news. So could you roll the video?
Yep, sure.
Every single baby born in Britain is going to have their DNA mapped under an NHS revolution to predict and prevent disease. Health Secretary Wes Streeting says it'll help people leapfrog deadly illnesses and bring in a new era of personalised medicine. Within the next decade, every newborn baby will undergo full genomic sequencing, predicting their risk of hundreds of diseases before they can even crawl.
Well, there you go. So that, I think, was GB News. Was that GB News?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Right. So this can have its upsides, as I was saying. It can help with genetic conditions like spinal muscular atrophy. For example, if that condition is caught before symptoms appear, it can prevent severe disability or even death. So it does, as I said, have its upsides. But this technology can also be used for eugenics, like in the film Gattaca I was alluding to earlier, or Brave New World. For example, if you could map out the health trajectory of someone starting at their birth, how would that affect their insurance purposes? It could really, if corporations knew how that person's health was going to develop, that could really have a massive impact on what the careers they could choose, what plans they could make. So Gareth, do you think this is opening up Pandora's box, man?
I certainly do. I mean, they've talked for years about designer children, and and also I think as well, like if say a parent gets a scan and it looks like the child is going to have a lot of health issues, well, wouldn't that just lead to a rise in abortions? Like rather than having to treat the child, just or they can tinker with it to get the ultimate super baby that they want, which is that takes away sort of human destiny in a way, and I think there's so many ethical questions that this raises that it's frightening.
Well, the reason the UK government's essentially a leader in this or is piloting this scheme is because we already have a centralised healthcare system in the UK as opposed to like Germany or Poland, or most countries. Okay, and
why didn't you pick those two countries?
Oh, Germany. I don't know, just random countries. But but it could, so there's a lot of good that can come from this, as I said. But our NHS has recently partnered with Palantir, and that's the problem I've got with one of the main problems I've got with this. That, for among other things, like Palantir, this company specialises in big data analytics, AI platforms, and allegedly has created targeting systems for the IDF in Gaza. They have essentially helped the IDF in the deployment of hunter-killer drones and watch targets to, make alongside the Lavender artificial intelligence program. So you've essentially got hunter-killer drones being deployed in Gaza with Palantir being used for the system of telemetry. And so when we're discussing Palantir being embedded in the NHS, because they've got a £330 million contract already with the NHS and data analytics. So what we're talking about here is a telemetry, a company involved in data analytics and telemetry now getting their hands, or will be getting their hands, on our genomic sequencing. So that takes us a step further into biotelemetry. And if this company gets a hold on our genomic sequencing, and for whatever purpose in the future wants to surveil us or keep a track on our, where we go, what we do, we can look at Gaza and
yeah,
see how
Alex Karp, one of the sort of heads of Palantir, also is on record in many TED Talks saying that his company does not, like, he's willing to kill.
Mm-hmm.
He's willing to develop technology to kill if there's a profit in it, which I think is, I mean, basically he just throws his ethics out with the bathwater as long as there's profit, and I think that is frightening.
Mm-hmm.
Palantir is a very, very terrifying company. In fact, they've also been quoted as saying the CIA isn't in bed with Palantir. Palantir is the CIA. And we know how ethical they are.
Let's not forget their connections to the White House. The head man in Palantir, Peter Thiel, he's friends with J.D. Vance.
Yeah, he put a lot of money into his campaign. Exactly. So Peter Thiel and Alex Karp are just, in my opinion, demons.
In fact, we've got a video of someone discussing the future of surveillance and telemetry. I just found this an interesting 60-second video on the frightening outcomes of it.
Voice to skull technology. This is also in the foray of directed energy weapons.
What is that?
The ability to, let's just say, throw your voice into your head or my voice into my head, or allowing algorithms that now they can blanket a whole geographical area and they can make everybody change their thoughts. They can, I use the term intrusive thoughts. Back to that fork in the road analogy. If you find yourself where you have to make a decision about something, next thing you know, you catch yourself kind of having an argument in your head with your own voices. Well, the ability to add another one of your voices in there, but have it controlled by somebody else's microphone, so to say, is a very powerful tool. And I think this is a weapon of war that we are seeing happen to everyone around us. The Department of Defense recently started initiating protocols for their employees, their agents, to discuss Havana syndrome-like symptoms. And on that list is that their agents are hearing voices in their head. And this is what they're getting at. This is that technology that, next thing you know, you're trying to make a decision, but there's another Sean in your head that now is actually somebody else's control. And through the manipulation of that voice, they can now push you, just like we have, the cell phones are weaponized now.
Right. And I know you want to get to the news regarding digital ID cards, which is also a form of data gathering and telemetry as well. But I want to first give the audience an illustration of the telemetry phenomenon and the history of it. So during the late 1950s and early 1960s, there was a neuroscientist called Dr. Jose Delgado, and he was involved. He invented something called the stimul receiver, which was an electrode capable of receiving and transmitting electronic signals via FM radio waves to the brain. Now, when this stimul receiver was implanted in the brain, it acts as a powerful stimulant. And when these FM radio waves would essentially, they would essentially interact and activate these implants. So these eventually would have the effects of causing evoked potentials in the brain that is electrical activity in the brain. And so you fast forward a little bit, and as a result of the Cold War between the US and the competition between the US and the Soviet Union, both of these countries researched intracerebral mind control electronic stimulation of the brain technology. And this was all done for biotelemetry for mind and behavior control. So you had organizations throughout Europe and the US that opposed this kind of research, such as Gruppen. That was one. And what Gruppen did is they supported individuals who were implanted without their consent. Now, Robert Lear in the US, he recently passed away, but Robert Lear was also involved in studying implants, although this was more involved with the alien abduction phenomenon. But there was a figure in the mid to late 20th century, a guy called Robert Naslund. And he's a case of someone who was implanted without his consent, and he had 3 implants put in his frontal lobe, and there were X-rays that, I mean, I've seen the X-rays. I've got the papers that show the implants, the anomalous objects on his frontal lobe, and this had a terrible, terrible effect on his health. And as soon as he had them removed, there was a drastic change in his life outcomes. His health just really improved. He was experiencing fatigue, lethargy, migraine, hearing voices. As that individual was saying just earlier, he was getting he was hearing voices and stuff. It was the same with Naslund. And the doctor that Naslund was getting treated by, he agreed with Naslund that this was done for the purpose of radiohypnotic intracerebral control. Essentially what that was is post-hypnotic suggestions that could be triggered via the transmission received by the implant. So I'm a big fan of George Estabrooks, who's a World War II hypnotist who was involved in mind controlling the Japanese prisoners of war and creating multiple personalities, dissonant identity disorder in these prisoners using hypnotism, among many other things. And so what he would do is he would create these Manchurian candidates, and he would create an alternate personality that would be dormant the vast majority of time, with the main personality not even being aware of the dormant personality unless a trigger word was used. And so what they did when they took it a step further is if they could implant someone that could receive a transmission that could deliver that trigger word, causing the multiple personality to manifest, that person would make an excellent Manchurian candidate. And that is what essentially Jose Delgado and Robert Naslund were arguing was happening.
That's frightening. Just the fact that you can walk about and not even know that you're being mind controlled, and you could be just sprung into attack mode just on a whim from a signal, from just a simple word. That's frightening.
Yeah. And I mean, he worked on other things. I think Jose Delgado is the neuroscientist. He worked on bulls, animals, and I think there was like these shock collars, and he put implants in animals too. There's actually a short video of Neuro Delgado. It's only like 40 seconds. If you could play that. This is the neuroscientist we were.
The owner, he said, well, you can do that with cats and monkeys. You cannot do that with bulls, can you? Well, I don't know. Let's try. Would you allow me to place electrodes in one of your brave bulls? Sure, do that, no problem. But you will not be able to pacify him. I don't know, maybe not. Let's try.
Dr. Delgado really did intend to stop an animal specially bred to be aggressive in its tracks. This footage shows Dr. Delgado in action.
We anesthetized the animal. There we implanted electrodes in the head. Well, next day the bull was normal, and the bull was just going around charging against anybody who could be in the bull ring. Just completely normal. Then I thought, well, I know a little about bullfighting, so I'm going to test this by myself.
Delgado leapt into the ring with an extremely dangerous animal, armed with nothing but a remote control.
Is supposed to be good.
He was betting his life that this would work.
The animal was a few feet away. I push a button. in the radio simulator.
So there is an example of the remote controlling of an animal using an implant and a transmitter. But I think we've got a guest on, Professor Jam of the Bry Institute. How are you, Professor Jam?
Just to let you know, guys, yeah, I'm a Paki. I'm from the Debray Institute. I'm only joking, really. Like, I'm from Wales, really.
Jam.
No, seriously, no, guys, I'm from Wales. Not from the Debray Institute.
No, the Debray Institute.
Technology.
I thought the Debray Institute was a seminal research institute in Swansea.
I have no idea, bro. I'm like a Wales person from Wales, right? Okay.
You see, I don't, right. So, how are you?
I'm not too bad, mate. If you got to understand, right? Who wrote the song? As long as we beat the English, we don't care. Come on now, come on. Yes, my guy. Stereophonics. So I'm the same as you.
Right. It looks like Professor. We've lost the signal to Professor Jam of the Bry Institute. But anyway, so we'll get back to what we were talking about. So you had Dr. Jose Delgado there, and he had experimented on that bull and stepped in the ring.
Managed to stop it in its tracks, just where we shock her. That is brave. That is frightening as well. Because if that didn't work, he was dead. Like, he was in hospital for a hell of a long time.
And that's what we're that's I think what we were dealing with in the 60s, 50s.
Yeah, like if you can do that to a bull, I mean, human psychology is I think more programmable than that. So
I remember we had the MK Ultra sub project 119, so 119, and that was disclosed by the Congressional Church Committee. So it's available to read, where you essentially had it outlined that the animals and humans had been experimented on, and it was successful using implantation and remote control. So this was technology that the CIA was using, or similar technology the CIA was using in the 60s, and they had themselves admitted it was successful.
Whoa.
And again, that's not taken into account, the technology that we're discussing today.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about something in the 60s. That's what 70 years ago.
Exactly.
So, like, now it's got to be 1,000 times more advanced.
Yeah.
To right. I mean, we were talking about gene sequencing and stuff. We're talking about controlling people right down to the very molecule. Weren't you talking about the chips and the tablets and stuff as well that are bringing on?
Oh yeah.
That I find quite spooky.
I think that was Borla.
Yeah.
He was discussing pills that would have microchips inside them. So once you had taken your medication, it would essentially tell the pharmaceutical company that you had taken your medication. So if they wanted to keep track that if you were using your treatment, they would know. They would know. It's not just like we have a database on whether, if you've had your vaccines, they would know if you had taken your nightly dose of propranolol or lamotrigine or antihistamine, whatever medication you're on for whatever purpose.
Your pain medication, your morning after pill, whatever it may be.
Morning after pill, that's a really good example. Say they wanted to keep a track on the birth rate.
Yeah, or your Plan B abortion pill, or so they can literally monitor who's promiscuous, who isn't, who's having babies,
who's been naughty and nice.
Have
we got any comments? Look at the live chats. Have we got any comments?
I don't see any at the moment, unfortunately. Billy Bob Johnny Boy says that this all sounds like sort of scientific gobbledygook, which I suppose it might be. But I mean, I think we're onto something here. I think it's not it's something that I think a lot of sort of normal people would sort of dismiss. But I think the fact that they're openly telling us they're doing it, right, that actually scares me more, because what are they not telling us? That's
Well, that was the thing
the
about
question.
that was the thing about MK Ultra, and the sub projects
Exactly.
that have been disclosed by the Congressional Church Committee. That we see that in the 60s the government were doing this, and it may be considered an autonomous department of the government, and that this is not a department of the government that has to disclose to your local representative the operations that they are doing. But nonetheless, it's still a department of government. And in the 60s, they were implanting people, they were implanting animals, they were drugging people. You've got Operation Midnight Climax, where they had brothels
that's
and
brothel,
and
with the LSD, wasn't it?
yeah. And then you had Dr. Owen Cameron, who was putting people in deprivation chambers. You had Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, you had Jolly West, and you got
Gottlieb and West are two names that once you notice them popping up, whatever you're reading is not good.
Yeah, and they're connected to everyone,
I mean, from the president down to Charles Manson, I mean, they just crop up all the time, to the point that it's like you just scan a document, you see one of those two surnames, and you just go, okay, this is a horror show. This is
Manson.
Oswald,
Ruby, Jack Rubenstein, and he was apparently considered of sane mind until Jolly West visited him. The next thing you know, Ruby's calling that there's a Jewish Holocaust, and next thing I know, he's been labelled as insane. So what was it, what was it that Jolly West actually did to Jack Ruby? Because he was alone with Jack Ruby when Jolly West was,
he was
given his time to interview him. It was just a one-on-one.
It was supposedly fit to stand trial. Then West did a doctoral thing.
And then after West's one-on-one, he's ranting and raving about there being a Jewish Holocaust, and he's not making reference to World War II and the actual Holocaust. He believed that in the 60s there was another Holocaust taking place. So, and again, there was no allusions to that. There was nothing in his psychological profile, his behavioural activity history before his session with Jolly West, or if you want to call it a session interview, that showed anything like that. So
who's the guy that shot RFK Senior? Because he had no recollection of doing that at all.
Sirhan.
And like he said that he'd been sort of hypnotized or tricked into doing that, and he had no recollection of being in that place or anything. That was, that's why a lot of people think he was a Manchurian candidate.
Didn't Sirhan also say he had no memory of?
Yeah, he had no memory of it at all.
Which is one of those signs that there was an interference and involvement there.
Yeah, and apparently, like a lot of these people in MK Ultra, if they do, like, they have no memory of it, but if they do remember, it triggers a suicide response.
Right, and then you've also got
the last chain of happiness or something it's called, and so like as soon as they start to remember, they get overwhelming existential dread and they just want to kill them.
That's just like me when I wake up normally. I overwhelming existential dread. No.
Were you in the America in the 60s? Were you near here actually?
I've never been.
You've never been?
so it's a shout out to Jimmy Dore.
Yeah,
I mean,
my boy.
Anyway, so but then you've got the satanic panic in the 70s and 80s, where you had a lot of these
what was that?
Son of Sam and all of these killers, but there are these allegations that they're connected to satanic cults or for doing it in the name of Satan. And a lot of these killers, like you've got the Amityville one.
Yeah.
Again, he said he heard voices.
That's right.
So we are talking about intracerebral post-hypnotic control using implantation technology, which can trigger multiple personalities, manic states, psychotic states. So a lot of these...
son of Sam a dog, like you said, it was his dog or something that was telling him to kill those people. But obviously, he was just hallucinating. His dog was telling him to.
Actually, I can't really remember the son of Sam case that well. Can you?
As far as I remember, he thought that his dog called Sam, right, who's like he treated like a son, was telling him to murder all these young blonde women. I think, and that's why he called himself Son of Sam.
Right. So, so I mean, we're also covering the subject of ethics, really. And if you're going to gene sequence babies, right? Because I know we've kind of digressed on intellectual topics, and this is essentially what we started off with, the gene sequencing of newborn children in the UK. However, if you're going to gene sequence babies can't give their consent.
Yeah. I mean,
just like with Robert Naslund, who was implanted without his consent, and you've got organisations like Grouping that support people, and you had again Lear, who in the organisations that worked with Lear, who would support people who had anomalous objects that again acted as transmitters. Many of these objects, and what I'd like to know is why, for example, would aliens abduct people and put implants in human beings that would receive FM radio waves?
Yeah. Why FM not?
Why not AM,
Why not DAB? Like, it's like... Yeah, it doesn't make much sense, does it?
No, so I think the hand of man is there.
But a government that wants to use, hypnotic suggestion via radio waves, that makes perfect sense.
And so and with babies, when you're gene sequencing babies, and again, there are pros, because if you can prevent certain conditions from manifesting, like I was watching this episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine recently, and the Doctor in Star Trek Deep Space Nine is a character called Dr. Bashir, and he's a mutant, and that he had his genes sequenced when he was a young boy, because he was a bit slower than other kids, and his growth was stunted too, and his IQ was lower. And so he had his genes sequenced, and he was enhanced and improved. And in Star Trek, this is a big taboo. Everyone has their genes sequenced in Star Trek, but it's only to prevent illness. You can't use it to enhance people for superficial reasons, like so we can get a leg up in society. It's only to remove
diabetes or whatever, rather than giving like a higher IQ or whatever.
So I mean, there's definitely pros to it, man.
I mean, they already do like gene testing on babies that have the heel prick, which can detect certain diseases early, which parents can consent to or opt out of. But this, I think, as well, anytime the government says something's mandatory, you should be worried. Because it's like, why are you forcing it if it's so harmless? Then why are you forcing it? Like, I mean, even in Scotland, your organs are presumed consent unless you opt out of it. So I actually opted out of it because I just didn't like the ethical idea of the state being in charge of my organs.
You could say, you asked the question of why is it happening for our consent? Well, because we have a centralised healthcare system, that we all opt into.
Yeah.
So it's the healthcare system is like, it's embedded in, it was part of the welfare reforms, and healthcare was part of it after World War II when they brought in the welfare state. I think it was Beveridge. Was it Beveridge?
I think so, yeah.
So it's part of the state here. So you're born into it.
Yeah.
And in a sense, as I said, like there are benefits to it, because when you think about in the United States how much it costs, for medication.
But do the benefits outweigh the potential for nefarious uses? That's the ethical question.
Well, I would like an American caller to to call in or click the link. The international number's on the screen. Or if you just want to leave a chat and tell us what you think, because I know a lot of Americans or people from the US who have healthcare problems and who have medication, they pay through the nose for a lot of that medication.
Yeah, I mean, it's even for something as simple as paracetamol is like extortionate.
So-
And in hospital as well, they even charge you for a glass of water to take your tablets with.
What do you mean? How much?
Like $20 for a glass of water.
Shut up.
No,
Really? How do you know it's $20 for a glass?
because I know one of my Canadian friends was in hospital, and they gave her paracetamol, they charged her for it, and then she asked for a glass of water, and it goes up to $20. And he's like, I could just take them dry, you know, but like, $20 for a glass of water just to take your pills.
Did you just go in the toilet and run the tap?
I think that's what she did, but I think that's just when you just want to put a price tag on everything at that point, don't you?
I mean, what was it Bill Hicks used to say in comedy? You've got the almighty dollar.
Yeah.
Everything's got a dollar mark on
Yeah.
it. You know,
Stop putting a dollar sign every bloody thing we own.
yeah. And so to bring it back, you know, you've got the pervasiveness essentially of low Earth orbit Starlink satellites, right? 5G transmitters, gene sequencing, advanced AI platforms. It's insane how pervasive this is.
Facial
And it's-
recognition.
yeah, and it's also like Ted Kaczynski was a prophet.
Right.
For all of those who don't know who Ted Kaczynski is, he was a Unabomber, and I'm not, you know,
Not condoning his
yeah,
actions.
I'm not saying that. But take away the explosive side of it, right? Because I've got his manifesto on industrial society and its discontents. I think it is, and it was a long time. It was years ago I read it. So if I've got the name incorrect, that's why. However, he does an excellent critique of leftism and how society and technology is progressing, and that we have a symbiotic relationship with technology, and that we always have had that.
Technogenesis.
And yeah, we mentioned that in our previous episode.
Yeah,
It's like Phil Collins with
I think that was the paranormal episode.
Yeah.
I believe.
Phil Collins meets
Ramstein.
Kraftwerk. Phil Collins meets Kraftwerk. Tangerine Dream. No, Tangerine Dream is not really techno. That's more ambient. No, like they were really good. They were really good. Tangerine Dream in the 80s because there were so many films we did the soundtrack for.
That's the ones that always work with John Carpenter, isn't it?
No, I don't think. I'm not aware of always working with John Carpenter.
Well, didn't they do like vampires and Near Dark?
They did Near Dark, not John Carpenter.
I don't know. I thought it was.
They did Near Dark. They did. We did Firestarter with Little Drew Barrymore at the time. We did one called Wavelength, which is about aliens. He's done a lot, but Tangerine Dream make films good.
Yeah.
There are many films that are so and then the soundtrack they add in and they create is so atmospheric.
Yeah.
That makes the film enjoyable to watch.
It ups it to another level. Yeah. Ups the tension or the drama or and they're just a good sort of relaxing band to just sort of for background noise as well. Just
I recently had to buy.
Oh, we have chats. Let's see what we're saying in the chat, people. Smeckle Cat. Greetings, Smeckle Cat.
Smeckle Cat, how are you doing? And where are you?
Show him on stream or
if he's there.
Just says greetings. Oh, good day, mates. So far, so good.
And ask him where are you from? Where are you watching us from?
Where are you watching from?
Do you know, I've realised the audience breakdown for myself. I have such a huge Indian audience. the people that seem to tune into this show the most are people from the UK, the US, and India.
That's so interesting.
I mean, about a quarter of my subscribers are Indian.
That's
But remember when the Caledonian Elixir was just a podcast?
yeah.
There was like a handful of people who watched it.
Yeah.
It was like New Delhi. It was always five people from New
yeah.
Delhi that watched.
Like one guy from Colombia or something for some reason.
It was Colombians.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean,
some Colombian folklore is like
we came a long way.
So what did what's his name?
Speckle Grit has not got back to us.
Well,
I don't know if that's a male or female. Sorry if I'm misgendering.
So again, it was almost like Ted Kaczynski was right there in his vision that what would happen as a result of that symbiotic relationship is it would reduce our freedom. So as technology became greater and more pervasive, our freedom would diminish. So if you look back to human existence 300 years ago, we had much more freedom. And that was because there was less technology.
Yeah.
And that was his argument.
He's from Detroit.
Detroit. Can you ask him what's the average price for, say, like medication in the state? In the state that Detroit's in?
Michigan.
So if you were to get insulin in Michigan, how much would
Michigan? And you.
Because in Scotland, if you have several health conditions such
I can hear him. It says you can hear you, so I have to keep typing.
Yeah. So if you have several health conditions, like say you've got diabetes, epilepsy, a heart arrhythmia, you can get all the medication you need and require for absolutely nothing. If you happen to take ill several times through the month, you can get 2 or 3 ambulances to hospital. Won't cost you a dime. But I know in the US,
maybe $30 or so, he says.
How much?
$30.
Is that recently because of the legislation Joe Biden pushed? Because I know there was a reduction. There was like a ceiling that was put in place because of legislation, something like that. Yeah.
He said he doesn't use it, so he doesn't know, but he said maybe $30.
Yeah. So, I mean, but essentially what we are discussing here is a pulp of subjects. So in the UK, as we've been covering, there has been this initiative in the government to launch gene sequencing. And
some meds are a lot of money if you don't have insurance. I can imagine so. Yeah. What's the average price of insurance? So
well, insurance is going to be greatly affected. So if these insurance companies, for example, or whatever it is you're getting insurance with, whether it's insurance in your car, whether it's health insurance, think how that would be affected if they knew the outcomes of the trajectory of your health. Yeah. If your DNA was mapped and the government and these companies knew how your health was going to be in 10 years' time. And there's always epigenetics. So if you don't take care of yourself, epigenetically, when your cells recycle in 5 to 10 years' time, your health outcomes will be poorer, as opposed to if you were living a healthy life and eating your porridge and your saying prayers.
Like if you're a heavy alcoholic and then you stop drinking after 5 years, your liver will totally regenerative and totally different from what it was previously. My sister actually, I just smoke a lot of weed and pretty much kills all the bad stuff.
So, can I ask, what's your favourite strain? There. Right now we're smoking one called Blue Dream Balance. And it's medicinal. Yeah. And it's a low THC strain, only about 8%, but it's in about 8% CBD too. But it's very medicinal, dominant sativa, a very good balanced smoke, and it's kind. It's not overbearing.
Yeah.
You're not going to freak out on it or get anxious. It's a healing smoke.
I mean, as we were talking about insurance, my sister used to work for Norwich Union back in the day. And she was like, if you're ever taking out life insurance, don't mention you smoke. Like at all, don't even say, oh, I have a cigar at Christmas, because that affects your policy. But with this, they can be easily go, you lied on your policy, it's null and void, because you had second-hand smoke at a party once. So you know what I
Right.
mean. It's it's quite. It's
Right. So for
I like any indica strain.
indica, so you like a body. So body
I prefer more of a sativa. You know, it depends on the
I
mood.
actually prefer an indica myself, but if I'm going to bed, you know, I prefer an indica, so it's a nice body smell to
Yeah.
relax me. But most strains, as you know, are hybrids,
Yeah.
so it's a combination thereof. So what we're going to do, right, is we're going to hit a break where we're going to play some music, and then we'll be back in about 3-4 minutes. So stay tuned, listen to some music that we're going to put on. It's quite comedic.
Yeah,
And
so hang in there, Smack,
we'll be back.
and we'll see you shortly. Is that the right one?
Yeah.
What the hell am I from, dear boy? Intrigue you, does it, boy? What fun? Let me tell you about it. I come from a long line of hitchhikers, all with bleeding massive thumbs. You see, the thumb is a tremendous boon to the hitchhiker. Helps with work, you know what I mean? Only problem was, when I was a child, my thumb was tiny. Not just tiny, like a single sugar puff. Disgusting. Even my own mother would reel back in horror, like an anaconda. Oh, what is it? Get it out of here! It's tiny! It's horrible! It's revolting! Take your tiny thumb and get out of here and never darken my door again, she'd say. I had to leave the family unit in search of a miracle. I wandered the streets, looking for the answer. And people told me of a magic shaman, part man, part hornet. So I went looking for him. I went everywhere. I combed the universe in search of the stripy insect shaman. Turns out he was in a local primary school in the bin, reeling about with the apple tores. Like they do. And I stood there with my thumb out, and he stung it, and he stung it, he grabbed onto it. It was like he was making love to it with his sting. In and out, more and more. Oh, the pus, the pain, the black voodoo, the wet jigsaw puzzle. I didn't know what was happening. Oh, for days I was in a trance, but when I came to, there it was, like a fleshy maraca, a thumb of gigantic proportion. A miracle, I said, a miracle. You're a true wizard. How can I ever repay ya? And he said to me, 500 euros. 500 euros? You won't see penny one from me, you slag. As I raised my thumb up to smash his tiny skull in, I could see in his little insect face, I could see him thinking, oh, I created that monster, I created that thumb, and now it's killing me. My own beast and creation, killing me dead. The sweet irony. I think he was saying that, although it was a long time ago. And in hindsight, he could have just been shitting himself.
Welcome back. And if you're joined, don't forget to subscribe or follow, put a like, and all that helps the channel. And you can also support us by buying me a coffee. And so for the price of a coffee, you can make the show even better, especially for me, you know, show your appreciation. Spent a bit of money on this equipment, so we need to make it back. However, if you're tipping, you can also tip on the cash tip on Twitter X. And again, you can get involved by leaving live chats or clicking the link and coming on and talking to us directly and with the audience, or calling the number on the screen. I think, have the international numbers on the screen?
Yes, it is. And Speckle Cat, yes, that song was awesome. Yes, it was indeed.
That song's actually from a show in the UK called
The Mighty Bush.
The Mighty Bush, yeah. It's remixed by my friend John, who makes a lot of the music for the show.
Yeah.
So biotelemetry, that is something that can also be integrated in an identity card. And incidentally, ID cards are another initiative that have recently been announced by the UK government. So, I mean, Gareth,
Yes.
what do you think about the whole miniaturized ID card that has biosensors for the purpose of telemetry?
I'm not a fan of this. They're talking about bringing this in mandatory by 2028, so only 3 years from now. And it will incorporate everything from your passport, driving license, medical records, right down to your social media posts. Right? And it's like, why do they need to know what all your benefits, your welfare benefits, everything, all in this one place to make it easier for the government to enforce their laws and their rules? That was a sentence that I read at the bottom of the Labour Together manifesto for it. And when I read that last sentence, that I had a chill.
Check your microphone, mate.
Oh, sorry. I had a chill run right through my spine. Because that seems more of a, this isn't for your benefit, this is for our benefit. And they say, they've been trying to do this for like,
it's a data security nightmare storing that kind of
information.
information.
Well, they've been trying to do this since like the early 2000s. And it's like, and they say it'll make it easier, it'll make it more convenient. For who? Hackers? How many times has the NHS been cyber attacked? Several.
Well, I mean, that goes to what we're saying. No top tier encryption is foolproof. And then it's not just the fact that it is a cyber security nightmare. You've got the looming threat of like corporate overreach, corporations that are going to steal your data for profit.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something, you got to bear in mind. And, it's not just like you get digital ID cards for telemetry, but you've got more. You get like the World Economic Forum that we're saying, like Albert Bohler talking about putting microchips in pills that would dissolve in the acid of your stomach, that would go back to the pharmaceutical company telling the company that you had used that medication. And another crazy idea promoted is by the World Economic Forum. On Bohler, by the way, he also was he not one of the top figures for Pfizer?
I think
yeah.
He's like the head of Pfizer, and now he was head of Nestle, and I believe he's on the board of Pfizer, and he's like the right hand of the WEF who took over for Klaus Schwab.
Oh, fuck. So another crazy idea promoted by the World Economic Forum, right? And there's a video of this, in fact, and this is Klaus Schwab, the former head of the World Economic Forum. And this video, this video isn't in English, it's subtitled in English, but for all those who are listening and not watching, we'll describe it afterwards. But just check this out.
Aujourd'hui, au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça?
Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans nos topos. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique.
We think that wearables are a key to the MAHA agenda, making America healthy again. And we are going to, my vision is that every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years.
Did you hear it?
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy said wearables are part of the MAGA tradition. And so is he alluding? Is he implying that this microchip wearable that Klaus Schwab is talking about, we will all have to beware? Is that the same thing? Is he saying that this is the same agenda, the same MAGA agenda?
I mean,
is he talking about some new line of Nike? And what's he talking about? What is Robert Kennedy talking about there? Is that the same wearable that Klaus Schwab is referencing?
I think it's Klaus Schwab was also talking about brain implants there as well.
Right.
I think they're both talking about, like, you have like Fitbits and stuff like that. I think that's kind of what they're talking about.
I mean that goes. So for the people who couldn't watch, essentially what Klaus Schwab was saying is that he wanted microchips in clothing to essentially track people. So that's another form of telemetry there.
It also said in the skin and in the brain,
right,
to interface with the digital world.
So I mean, we
sounds
already
very Borg-like. Sounds like assimilation to me.
But we already kind of do stuff like that. So we have Fitbit watches for the, purpose of giving your bio data, your physiological data, either to the app companies or to health services. For example, if you've got, I know certain people that have got implants that essentially are there to tell them the insulin levels, and it provides that information.
I know
to the
someone
app.
in my family who's got an insulin pump, so it tells her when her insulin is low, and it automatically injects her with insulin. I also have a family member who had a microchip in their heart to monitor the heart.
And then you've also
pacemaker.
You've also got heart holders that give the information back in live time to the hospital, and we've got that in the UK. So if you've got say a heart arrhythmia or any kind of palpitation, it lets the doctors know who are monitoring this in live time to see if you've got any cardiac issues. So we already give our cardiological, physiological data through Fitbit watches or through any device that our healthcare professionals can provide us. We give our location via GPS and Starlink and stuff like that. We give our thoughts through Google search engines. We have 5G transmitters to make sure that this is pervasive, omnipresent. So we are already always plugged in and capable to give our thought information, our location, and our physiology.
I was watching a documentary called The Agenda, and they were saying that even in like digital game tabletops, they have sensors that monitor your emotional state in children. So young children are playing, like, say, moving the blocks digitally on this table, and it's mapping where they're happy, sad, tired, their complete emotional spectrum. So, and then they have like sensors in Chinese classrooms to see if kids are paying attention or not, and which I think is, so they're not just mapping like your mind and your health, they're mapping your emotional state to manipulate you as well, which I think is really, really terrifying.
I mean, that's sort of what we've been doing in school since
dawn time, I suppose.
So if you can recall Burroughs' Skinner box that involved the operant conditioning of children, and Skinner put his daughter and attempted to condition his daughter in one of these boxes, and essentially his daughter became quite psychologically damaged and took her life as an adult. And you can go into the literature again of MK Ultra, how they used deprivation chambers, and you take it to Operation Monarch, where they talk about putting children in like Skinner box type environments where they would be sort of overloaded. They would experience sensory overload with crazy, frightening sounds or imagery that would just appear on screens. So they're in a completely blackened out room, and then all of a sudden it'd be sensory overload with frightening sound, frightening music, and crazy imagery. It would just appear.
Basically breaking them down to a psychological mess to build them back up in their image.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's their image, but they did it for. It was argued we were doing it for distant identity purposes because you could schism and split the mind, especially if it was traumatized enough early enough.
Your mind obviously would want to escape such a traumatic place. So it's like your mind's like, go to your happy place, go to your happy place. And you can just dictate where that is firing.
And Whitley Strieber, you know, the author who wrote Communion,
great film.
Well, the book was even better. I mean, the film doesn't do justice because Christopher Walken, I like Christopher Walken, right? He's a good actor, but Christopher Walken always plays Christopher Walken.
Well, I seen a quote for Christopher Walken recently, and he said, "There's so many roles I played just as Bugs Bunny and nobody noticed." It's like, no, you played as Christopher Walken, pretending to be Bugs Bunny. But that does make sense. You know, when you watch some of his more comedic roles back, it's like, yeah, you could see that. I could see him channeling Bugs Bunny through that. But he is just Christopher Walken in absolutely everything.
It doesn't matter whether it's like The Prophecy, Communion,
Batman,
the Deer Hunter. There's vast like monotone to everything. How he addresses other characters, how he experiences emotion, how
John Wayne's the same.
You think so?
Yeah. I used to think Jim Carrey was the same, but then he did like some other things like Endless Sunshine and Spotless Mind. But like Robin Williams, he's another one that I find.
No, I disagree with that because the film
24 Hour Photo,
1 Hour Photo, he's excellent in that.
Yeah.
Has anyone in the chats, anyone that's watching, ever seen 1 Hour Photo? If you have, can you tell us what you think of it? It's a phenomenal film.
Chat seem to have disappeared. No, there's no one. Oh, Susan says she seen it and it creeped her out.
1 Hour Photo?
Yeah.
He is creepy.
Yeah.
I recall there's a scene in it where he's sitting alone in his living room on this chair and he's watching The Simpsons, and there's got that eerie music in the background, and then he enters another room that's got all the photos, tacked to the wall, and it is a creepy film. But it's a film about, loneliness
and obsession, and wanting a better life.
Yeah, he's stuck in his imagination, recreating his life, wondering what it'd be like to live out the lives of others.
Yeah.
It's that existential angst that we all go through at one point, especially for a lot of men who are, single and lonely and are getting into being middle-aged, and they can't pick up the partners easily as they used to, because all the women in the Western world, Susan, are on dating sites. It's different.
It's a shame, man. Like you don't even get the 1 hour photo people anymore. Like, I used to take pictures of things just to mess with them, like roadkill and stuff like that, just to see. So it'd be like a music festival, and then like 2 pictures of roadkill right at the end of the row, and then they'd be like, "Give me this awkward look. Like, did you kill that thing, or did you just find it?"
But everyone who seems to be connected that I know, I'm aware of big names, to the World Economic Forum and these technocratic futurists like Yuval Noah Harari. I mean, there's a quote where he said, "The future is eternally young, sexless, and non-breeding," and there's something not fun about that.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a really fun time.
I mean,
if you're a psychopath,
the eternally young thing. I mean, I don't mind that, but
that's really though.
I don't know. I wouldn't mind staying 25.
When you're young, you're so.
But see, you've got the mind,
old and brass and just idiotic,
But if you could rewind the clock back to being in your early 20s, would you do it?
Well, I was a bit of an arsehole. I was not particularly a fun person, man.
But you've got the mind of an adult, of like a mature adult. But you've got the health and the strength and the vigour of like a young man in his 20s.
Maybe.
Because I mean, when I was 20, I could run for miles without getting exhausted.
Yeah,
I remember.
because you're getting chased.
I mean, I remember. I'm best not going to
Yeah.
past. But so when you saw Robert Kennedy, referencing wearables,
Yeah.
is he alluding to this? Do you think he's alluding to the same thing that Klaus Schwab was?
I think so, yeah. Which means to me that sounds like he's been compromised by either the WEF or Big Pharma or both.
And it's like, I remember Trump was talking years ago about Patriot cities, and it reminded me of 15-minute cities, but just with a different.
Yeah. And using biotelemetry, they can do a thing with that called geofencing. So that means that you have like a certain radius that you're allowed to travel in.
Mm-hmm.
So say you're in an electric car
Mm-hmm.
and you're driving along the highway out of your 15-minute city, and you cross it, you get all the, your security camera, which all have sensors.
Mm-hmm.
It reads your registration or whatever, making model of your car. You drive out your 15-minute city, it can turn off. If you're on a central digital currency,
Mm-hmm.
which is another form of telemetry, they can literally just debank you from one area to another, or they can just cut the engine of your car so you can't travel outside of your 15-minute city.
Yeah.
And if you walk on foot, then you're debanked anyway, so you can't access anything.
Mm-hmm.
If it's all facial recognition, like, we have facial recognition to enter a store or whatever, you walk up to that store, it doesn't recognise your face because you're not from that city, so you can't even enter.
Mm-hmm.
That's a prison.
So what's your worst fear? Is that in terms of this biotelemetry and where it's going, and biotelemetry involves gene sequencing, right?
Yeah.
That's why one of the reasons I included it. And
I think,
what's your worst fear?
Well, I think it's like Alex Jones referred to it as a digital gulag, and I think that is the big fear. David Icke once said there's two types of prisons. One where you can see the bars and you know you're not free. The other is you can't see the bars and you think you're free but you're not.
Well, I remember, in ancient Vedic literature, there's two forms of prison. There's Maya, which is the illusion and we all live in. And then there's Advaya, I can't remember the second word, the pronunciation correctly, but it is the prison and delusion of our own ego. So there's the prison and delusion of the material universe, which we become over-identified with, forgetting that we are pristine consciousness in and of itself, and we become, just through time, identified with the objects of the universe. Well, Advaya is, having your ego dominate and control you and experiencing the delusion of the ego.
That seems like every other relationship.
But that's what do you mean?
Just to be controlled and dominated by outside forces, by placating your ego or shutting your ego down.
Oh yeah, well, people do that. If they try and take control of you, or they try and influence you by bigging you up and by making you happy. And if they can't control you by making you happy, they try and bring you down and make you angry.
Yeah.
And so anger and happiness, or I would say love, but these emotions, that appear as polarities, are actually the same coin or the same energy. They're just directed in different ways, and they have similar effects on the body.
You were saying to me, was it yesterday, about with water, you can change the consistency of water by giving it negative energy or positive energy.
Yeah. And I mean, if you give love, it can crystallize and become this beautiful structure. And if you give it negative, anger and negativity, it becomes black and molasses.
It's the same with houseplants. You scream at a houseplant up constantly, it will wither and die. If you nurture it and you tend to it flourishes.
So what did you say was your worst fear in terms of biotelemetry?
Being in a digital prison and not particularly realise it until you walk out beyond your parameters.
So what does that, in your mind, what does that Like, what do you, does that feel
basically, like, if you travel outside a 15-minute city, you become a non-person. I think the whole idea of making the world completely digital for everyone, those that want to be off the grid will end up being a non-person. Then you're in a digital apartheid state, and I think that is frightening to think about.
Why?
Because, like, we have natural ways that we've lived for millennia.
Have you lived for a millennia?
No, I mean, human beings have lived.
I don't know how a human being that's lived for a millennia.
No, we've lived a natural way for millennia as human beings. We've lived a natural life without technology. Without digital technology. The human race in general.
The human race in general hasn't lived for a millennia without technology. When did this happen?
I mean, without digital technology, I said.
So
it's only in the last how many years with digital technology?
Right.
But to force us to go completely digital and also leading into transhumanism, I think that's...
Do you not think there were similar arguments in the turn of the 20th century and the 19th century in terms of the Industrial Revolution?
I'm sure there was.
Industry and the effects that industry would have. I mean, modern day cities didn't come about until the automobile because we had to plan cities around roads and the central business district and such. But we got on with things.
Yeah.
And it just, society and human culture was re-engineered and we adapted. So you say you're afraid of the digitalization of our culture. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Well, to me...
Or is that what you mean?
I think that's what I mean. But I also mean like to shut off the natural world from us, I think, would be very, very detrimental to...
What does that mean, to shut off the natural world?
Well, when you're talking about like digital processed meat, you know, and plants, all our plants are now
GMO and shit like that,
right? So but to have like the means to survive outside in the wilderness, I think it's a key skill, and to like be able to take that away from people, you know, to be able to like hem people in to basically concrete digital jungles.
Aren't we already hemmed in concrete digital jungles?
Yeah, but you can still get away from it. But
how many people do you know that get away from it and stay away from it?
I've known a few.
That stay off the grid?
I know one or two people who stayed off the grid.
One or two?
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot. And I admire those people. I think they're very, very, you know.
Yeah.
But even with this, like, with like your digital ID and stuff, like, would that not force them out of their off the gridness?
Well, I'd just see it. I mean, I agree with you largely. Like, the fact that they want to essentially patent all our food, and we're just eating genetically modified food that they essentially have a patent for, and they can alter and change it at will, and we can't go outside of that. And so this gives them control over our physiology. So for me, it's a trust issue. Do they have our best?
I totally agree with you.
And if they do, then you know, fair enough. But if they don't have our best concerns and welfare, and then we're all fucked.
One person to break that trust though, and then the whole thing to House of Cards. And I think when you're talking about an organisation like Planetary, who have no ethics, you know, they don't mind killing their enemy. They don't mind, you know, they have no ethics when it comes to, you know, digital privacy or anything like that. I think that is really, really scary. You know,
do you know what it reminds me of? That episode of Star Trek, the original series, where they land on this planet that is run by an artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And the population of that planet live a very feudal, simple lifestyle. And all the complex and difficult decisions are basically made by this AI. and so many generations have passed that they have forgotten that it is an AI, essentially.
They think it's a god.
Aye, and it makes me think about something I heard one time about the guy, I think it was the second guy, someone from Palantir, who believed that artificial intelligence is in control or will be in control and could retroactively influence humanity. So what was it again?
You mean Alex Karp talking about Rocco's Bathos?
Right, what's that?
Where it's AI will always exist
Right.
at some point,
Mm-hmm.
but the humans that don't help it exist,
Mm-hmm.
don't bring it into existence, will be punished by the AI at a later date,
Mm-hmm.
retroactively.
Mm.
So basically, it's forcing you to be part of this AI organism, otherwise you will be punished by it, regardless of when it comes into being.
And I think that's difficult to imagine in the sense when he's talking about retroactively, because we think of ourselves as creatures rooted in time. But if we think about how we now interact with the world, we interact with the world almost as much associatively as opposed to through linear time. So when you use a computer and you use a search engine, or when you use YouTube, you type in something and it brings up things associated with your item that you want to search. So Jung also implied that synchronicity is much like that it wasn't so much cause and effect, but it was association. So if we were to index things through association as opposed to causality in time, then it makes this idea much more graspable, much more understandable.
Yeah.
But it's difficult because we've grown up indexing things through time, through school and college, and is there any super chats?
No, it seems to have went all quiet for some reason. I shall let you know if anything changes.
Right, I tell you what, let's hit another. Let's hit a break. Let's go for the Meet Me in Moscow.
Okay. I believe that's this one here.
The train said Moscow as I stood against the wall, stranded in Warsaw with no one to call. I needed to get there before the heat came down. I knew that my future lay deep down in the underground. Meet me in Moscow. Come on and meet me in Moscow. The mood was undecided. Some of them scratched their heads. The truth was ill-divided, broken like a frozen piece of bread. But I needed to get there before the heat came on down. I always knew that my future lay deep down in the underground. Meet me in Moscow. Come on, meet me in Moscow. And meet me in St.
Okay, welcome back. And don't forget, if you're enjoying the show or learning, don't forget you can subscribe and follow, put a like there, helps the channel, helps the algorithm. Or you can tip on PayPal, buy me a coffee. Or, what else can we do?
You can click the link. You can call the UK number and international number are both on screen. You can follow Facebook, and we're also available on audio services such as Spotify, Apple Music, whatever.
Right. Okay. Audio issues, yeah.
And when did coffee become a unit of monetary measurement? That's what I've always wondered, when you see all these adverts and that for just a coffee a day. It's like, when did because coffee costs all sorts of money.
Yeah.
Like you can have a coffee for like £2.50 or 12, 15, 16, £25, depending where you are in the world.
That's true.
Yeah.
Hey, but you know what? I think we should wrap this up. Let's just wrap this one up.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to thank everyone for who tuned in. Thanks for tuning in. And if you've enjoyed, catch you later.